Welcome, everybody, to the show. This is Counterclipping Show number 260 for March 9th, 2026. And I'd like to thank everybody for coming this evening. Our topic tonight is the Wargames that will not die. And funnily enough, I did actually have to change. I didn't have to. I decided to change the thumbnail to say the war games that would not die instead of undead war games, because I figured people would think of that. So I was a little bit late today. I'll explain why in a moment. In the meantime, I am continuing to clip 1914 Twilight in the East, and what we are drinking tonight is not from this excellent bottle of Michter's bourbon, bottled at 45.7%. So my brother for last Christmas got me a kit. Blend your own whiskey. So that's what we're drinking today. So it comes with a variety of chips and little bottles you can do experiments in. So the problem with this is that I did this thinking, what a great idea. I can't wait to try it. Now you're supposed to let this stuff sit for 10, 20 days or something like that. This was bottled on March 3rd of last year. And so my hopes were not high. But it turns out that it is extremely woody because there's some wood chips in there. But otherwise, it's actually fairly drinkable. I did put a little bit of water in it. And I definitely got more of sweet notes in this than I do out of the standard Michter's, too. So, interesting experiment. Perhaps we will drink the rest of it and try another time. All right. So there is some news, some personal news. I applied for a job today that is relevant to our community. Let me put it that way. And we'll see if that turns out to be real or if I don't get a response back. It will be amusing and very gratifying if I do. It is a place where I think I could potentially do some good for the entire hobby of tabletop gaming. So in any case, the other news is that about an hour ago, I fell down the stairs like a decrepit old man. If I'm a little shaken up, and this arm is really stiff because this is where I landed, is right here. There's a bit of an abrasion that I don't know if you can see on camera because I got all the lights on now, but boy, it hurts. I appear to otherwise be okay, but this arm is going to probably be sore at minimum for several days. I'm reasonably sure I didn't break anything. Reasonably. I did not go into shock, which happened last time I fell down those very same stairs. I passed out. I'm like, boom. And my wife's standing over me like, what the fuck? What's going on? So she scurried to assist, and it was much appreciated. But it was an unplanned adventure for this afternoon. So I have survived the dreaded stairs down into Ardwulf's Lair, because they were these stairs coming down right here, and I was going up, and I decided I forgot something and went to turn around and boop, 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 boop. So what fun! Anyway. Right. I mean, we're still here, right? If it had been that bad, I would have canceled the show. But fortunately, that does not appear to be necessary at this time. And also, fortunately, I've got medication, so we're going to be okay. I think I do want to use the left hand for this though today. I don't, oh, that's going to hurt. I don't remember hitting my head. So hopefully everything is okay. I probably should see a doctor, and I appreciate everyone's concern, but I think otherwise, I think I'm okay. Now, if I'm like dizzy tomorrow or something like that, then yes, I will seek attention. So, and thanks everyone for the wishes for a speedy recovery. So before we get started, I don't have any additional news other than that we haven't already discussed. So I would like to start by saying thanks for watching. Everybody who comes out, week in and week out, I really do appreciate it. I especially appreciate our channel sponsor at Noble Knight Games. Thank you, Noble Knight. We'll hear from them later. And of course, the many folks who help out here at Ardwulf's Lair by doing various things. Money is a big part of that. So those who contribute, the patrons especially, I want to say thanks from the bottom of my heart. That's more emotion than you're going to get out of me for the rest of the show. Now, speaking of war games that would not die, let's talk about Europa. All right, this is the new europaseries.com website, and I am going to throw it into the chat here for anyone who would like to take a look at it. Now, this is pretty, new. But there is some news posts, most of which, I reported on a little bit of this later, but there's one from March 2nd here. There is consolidated Europa errata and extras here. And down here, we could see their kind of roadmap. This is the really interesting one from February 12th. The roadmap that they want to do. So, where we start here is that they're not talking about revising the entire game system, but it would likely never. And I think this is a completely reasonable reason to not do that, actually, because it would never get finished. So don't throw the existing games out, but there are minor improvements and revisions that could be made. But the existing components are fine, especially the maps and counters done by GRD. The one major exception here is the USSR. The Soviet OB and maps of the USSR need to be revised. I can totally believe that, given what has happened since the release of Fire in the East. Given all the information that has come out about the USSR since the fall of the Soviets. Even here, the goal is to get the maps and counters up to second front / first to fight quality, rather than introduce any major new scheme. The one minor exception is the map of the British Isles. This goes back to GDW days, and I think Mark worked on that, actually, and does need updating. Parts of southern Britain should have hedgerow terrain, like parts of northern France have bocage. Sufficient information simply wasn't available during work on the second edition, Their Finest Hour. I'm not positive which edition of Their Finest Hour I have. So they're not going to have a mass wholesale revision here. So primary goals are fixing the Soviet OB and the maps for 41 to 45. And I am taking that as the maps from Fire in the East and Scorched Earth. They would like to do a Barbarossa Unleashed core set with an eye toward a generalized Europa core rule set that can be utilized across all games. And the emphasis is on playability over endless cluttering detail. This is a great idea. Maintain and update the current rules set as advanced level rule set. Okay, that I can live with that. Resolve the dichotomy in the two main Europa supply systems. The continental system, like in Fire in the East, Scorched Earth, and Second Front, does not handle the North Africa / Middle East region adequately. This is why there are two supply systems. The desert system would be overwhelming if applied to the continent, and likely too gamey as well. I think that moving the desert supply system outside of the desert would be an enormous mistake. So I agree with them. And they want to create grand campaign scenarios along the entire war in Europe, North Africa, and Western Asia to be played from these 4 different start dates. June of 41, April of 42, April of 43, and April of 44. So that's very interesting. And then there's some secondary goals here. Soviet OB 1939 to 41, update the British Isles map, update the French OB, which I'm going to differ with some of the verbiage here. But they're probably going to update the OB. Blitz Europa, a very reduced rule set with very high playability using the existing maps and counters. That sounds intriguing for those of us who appreciate having multiple different rule sets and editions available for our game systems. I realize that's not all of us, but there are upsides to that proposition too. And classic Europa grand campaign scenarios for September 1st, 39, May of 1940, September of 40, and April of 41. Detailed production system. What if the war went into 46? What if it started in 1948? So we'll see what gets done on this, but just updating the Soviet OB and map sounds like something to me that they're already working on. So yes, well, they're not promising the moon. They're promising like an update kit is kind of what it sounds to me for existing games in the series. And I think given where Europa is at right now, I think that it's a pretty good strategy overall. And so you can go peruse. I put a link to this in the chat, so you can go peruse this if you want. Now, this classic Europa site, I think this is John Estelle's site, and this has been around forever. But this now directs folks to the new website. So, and here we have Rich Banner, Mark Miller, of course, John Stone, I think, and this Bill Stone, John Estelle. Sorry, I did fall down the stairs today, folks. So that's going to be my excuse for any idiocy that comes out of my yap this evening. So anyway, John Estelle and Mark Miller do give me confidence that there is like legit leadership at the head of this thing, and a design vision too. So I think it's good news for Europa fans, and anything that gets released as a part of this program, I think is welcome by Europa players. So I think they're talking about doing another magazine too, but we'll see how that goes. So I will be bringing further Europa news to you as it develops. But in the meantime, no new games in the immediate future. By the way, I would like to mention Danny Seckery is our new moderator this evening. We felt after last week's show, where there was something weird going on, that it would be a good idea to have a couple extra pair of eyes in the chat. So thank you, Danny, for being volunteered by me to do this. So no, this does not. They are not affiliated with HRD or HRG or whatever it is at all. But to be fair, they're not doing anything. So if these guys do, then that's something that we weren't getting before. So Total War is dead, Jim. That is true. So I mean, there's a certain flavor of weirdness, if you will, that I will happily tolerate around here. There is also somebody who, some types of weirdness that I won't. So I could dress it up. The problem is I'd have to write a script. So I could do this, developing Total War. Yeah, they're developing it right into the end of time, so. Well, it's always Brant's fault, except when it's Dan's fault, or if it's my fault because I'm a dipshit and fell down the stairs. So, clip encounters doesn't seem to be bothering me much at the moment, but I won't swear that I'll get a lot done clipping this evening. Let me put it that way. So Europa clearly is one of those game systems that will not die. It's been published by multiple publishers. It's been published in multiple decades. And despite the attempts of some to kill it, it's still alive somehow. And I think that's terrific, actually. I think these old games have value. Broadly speaking, I'm not necessarily singling out Europa here. Broadly speaking, I think these old games have value, and in some cases, some really interesting mechanics in them that deserve to be revisited and or updated. And boy, Europa could use an update. So there's that. There is a certain grandeur to Europa that many other war games, some managed to get it, that many other war games, because you're getting like the entire theater, right? Whatever that theater is, at least if you set it up that way. You don't have to. But like the big classic Europa games, so Fire in the East or War in the Desert or something, or Second Front, frankly, there's a certain grandeur to Europa that other war game series find hard to match. And I think it has been achieved in a couple other places, but not as many as you might think. I think that that sense of grandeur is absent from OCS, for example, because you're only getting a very small portion of the front. Now that problem is about to be solved by the upcoming The Heroes City, and by about, I mean whenever MMP releases it. I don't know that that's going to be exceptionally soon, and it's not even on pre-order yet. So Russian campaign would be another one. That came out originally from Jedco, went to Avalon Hill, went to L2, has more recently been republished both by Compass and GMT. So it might be me actually. Maybe not. There's a well, maybe I'll share that origin story later. So if you want to write the script, Brant, I'll volunteer to be the reader. That's okay. Maybe I shouldn't have said that, but all right. So Fire in the East, Avalon Hill, Stalingrad. But Avalon, nobody's really tried to resurrect Avalon Hill, Stalingrad. It's been out of print for a long time now. Perry Sporopoulos says it's been elevated to wargame mythology. Certainly Total War has. And you may interpret the term mythological here as broadly as you like. But I mean, yeah, it is part of the pantheon, as it were, of legendary war games and war game series. And I do think that is a somewhat bigger list than games that have the kind of Europa style grandeur that I'm talking about. Wooden Ships and Iron Men, unfortunately, is dead at the moment, so we'll see if it comes back. I would love to see that. I think it is a great game, a game that has a lot to offer nowadays, at least for certain players. And I will agree. I think Russian Campaign is a fine game. Now, am I going to choose to play a lot of Russian Campaign in the 2020s? Probably not, to be honest. But I do think it was very valuable to me to have played it last year, the year before, for the first time, and seeing what it was doing. I think it is a solid game. There are things about it I don't like. I don't like mandatory attacks, although I will observe that it does not break the game in the case of Russian Campaign. It's kind of very much part of the game. So yeah, I kind of figured. So that's good for me. Right. Ogre is another one, actually. And, we might also point out the fantasy trip at this point, because Steve Jackson has managed to untangle that rights situation. I've got to remember to not use that as much. So Steve has managed to untangle the fantasy trips rights situation from metagaming. And there's a big new pack. It's down here, right by my shoulder. There's a huge new package out. It's not new at this point. It's probably 8 years old by now, but that has come back, and that continues to be available from Steve Jackson Games. Advanced Squad Leader, I would say, is I mean, you would have to say it cannot die, but I mean, I don't think it's ever been all that close to death, other than through that fairly narrow window between the time when Avalon Hill sold out to Hasbro, and when MMP started actively being the producer of ASL, and that I'm not sure how long that period is, but in my memory it wasn't very long. I would actually have to research that, and I have not done so. All right, BattleTech. Yeah, BattleTech's been around from several different companies and several different iterations. It's made appearances in computer games as well. I would certainly say it is, and you could consider it a war game. I think it's not unreasonable to consider like the regular BattleTech a war game. Simon Weinberger, thanks for stopping by. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think Flat Top is an amazing game. We've played it. We didn't play it this year, and I'm not sure we played it last year at Winterfest, but we usually do. And it's a tremendously fun experience. So if we're talking about mythical, yes, or let's use the word legendary. I think Flat Top legendary. I can get on board with that. Jeff Beeler points out Labatai de la Moskova won the CSR award in 1976, and the first edition is the grandmother or whatever of the Labatai series. Does the French have a fatherland, not a motherland? That's an idiosyncratic thing in European languages. So it's not just the Germans, for those who were thinking it was. But yeah, no, this is totally a legendary game, and it is a game series that exists to this day. And in fact, this battle, in what I would describe as a very revised version, was released by Clash of Arms not that long ago. Paul Dangle mentions A House Divided, which I think is another good pick. Originally published by GDW back in the day. I think Mayfair and or Phalanx published it at one point. And it's coming back from GMT, and it's relatively far along from what I gather from the press from GMT's newsletter. So All for Green Things has been around forever, but I'm not really sure that it's really the subject of much discussion nowadays, which is, no slight on the game, but it does seem, and to be honest about it, and maybe this is just my, from my chair, I'm not tied into the Steve Jackson Games loop really at all. Their new version of GURPS that is coming out, which is basically like a 4.5, I guess. There's going to be some very minor revisions. They're going to package everything in one enormous book, which, fine. I do think that I don't like the 4th edition books, and I don't extend that criticism to the system. I think that it is incredibly space hungry. It is incredibly broad, which GURPS is supposed to do, and that's fine. But I think you could have fit the entire game system in a fifth of that page count with good, concise technical writing. Richard Lord uses Avalon Hill Stalingrad to teach new players how to play war games. There's still people playing this, and people make YouTube videos on it from time to time too. So, do I have this? I think I do have this, actually. So that means that it is on my to-do list of things to do, is to play Avalon Hill Stalingrad, along with Waterloo. What are the other old ones? I've got to get Getty's. It's not up here anymore. It's in the other room. I pointed and strained my elbow for nothing. I do have an Avalon Hill Gettysburg, but it's the one from the 80s, and that's actually the one that I would like to play. But I've got Stalingrad, Waterloo, and Midway now. So, and I want to play all of those, actually. And it's not like any of them is super duper long, right? Avalon Hill continues to be, and was from the beginning, the most successful of the Game Master series from Milton Bradley. I don't know that there were more than 4. I'm pretty sure there were 4. I did like, my favorite was Shogun, actually. Although I like Conquest of the Empire too. I mean, to some extent, all of these games are dressed up versions of Risk, except for Broadsides and Boarding Parties. But what was the other one? Fortress America. I didn't like Fortress America, but I think I played it too late. I played it in the 2000s and not in the 80s. I think if I had played it in the 80s, I probably would have liked it quite a bit. Mean Joe Green, thanks for stopping by, says game systems that survive the demise of the parent company to be picked up by another company count as games that will not die, especially if that company, that whoever's run, or if somebody is currently publishing it, right? So this does extend this category to a lot of things that, say, Compass has done, and even a few things that GMT has done. And for GMT, I'm thinking specifically of Pacific War, but they've reprinted a number of classic war games that I think are very good over the years, including some Ted Racer stuff from Command Magazine, including, there's probably more, but I fell down the stairs today. So, and of course, the role-playing sphere is full of this too. Chaosium being the incredible exception of a company that's kind of still one entity. So, I mean, it's more complicated than that, but Chaosium is still around and still publishing, and I think they began publishing in the 70s. Well, it was definitely the 70s, about 75, 76, with publishing war games. They did a Napoleonic war game back in the day. Nowadays, they do a lot of the BRP system stuff, so Call of Cthulhu, RuneQuest, Pendragon, which, despite what people will tell you and looking at the book, where it's, it's a use a D20 and not percentile. So what? All the rules are exactly the same. It's just 5% increments, and you roll a D20 instead. It's otherwise BRP down the line. So, all right. I would also kind of like to do this, Vincery, to be fair. Now we've, you still got to do a lot of paperwork, right? But the game master will handle it, and when we do it at Winterfest, this is exactly how we do it. It's blind with double blind with a referee, and it's fantastic. And Gola is almost 40 years old. Yeah, that's true. Didn't this originally come from Ragnar Brothers, as I recall? Don't quote me on that. Lace Wars, yeah, I mean that's been going. They've got I don't know, in the teens of games in that series now. I really do need to check out Red Sash Games, and I have a number of things flagged on the want list from Noble Knight. So Panzer Blitz. Well, I will say that MMP is doing its best to kill it with whatever new project that they were working on for forever that still has not matured into anything. Hopefully that project is still alive, but people still play Panzer Blitz, right? We had it on a table at Origins at one point. I believe I might not be thinking of the right game. There was another early game from FASA where you were playing like these modular robots, and I never had that. I would say, I mean, that sounded different to me from my recollection back in the day. But yeah, I might be thinking of something else FASA did back in the day too. I was too busy ogling their Starship miniatures in the catalog, actually. Torpedo Junction. So yeah, well, I mean, I hope so. I hope so, and I hope Bill Cooper can pull this off. I have high hopes for this. So D&D Unkillable. Yep, and I think it is fundamentally unkillable. Excuse me. I think it is fundamentally unkillable at this point because of the OGL, but more so because a lot of D&D is now in Creative Commons. So it's, that is the state of things at this time. So if Hasbro sold off Wizards of the Coast to somebody who, let's say they sold it to Mattel, and Mattel says we're going to bury it because we like Barbie more. So is Barbie Mattel? I'm not even sure. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all because D&D is in the Creative Commons. Somebody will come along and republish it. It might not be called D&D, and it legally can't be as long as whoever holds it wants to retain the trademark. And unlike copyright, which lasts basically 100 years now, trademark doesn't last as long. You have to continually renew that. So whether we're calling it D&D or we're calling it OSR or we're calling it Old School Essentials or we're calling it Swords and Wizardry or whatever, it's pretty much the same game with minor variations. And those variations aren't any greater than we have seen between different editions of games that say Dungeons and Dragons on the cover. So, all right, Drew says he thought Up Front would go on forever, then an Avalon Hill sold out. Well, it came back and then they ran off with the money. But now you can get it through Wargame Vault. So I would make the argument that Avalon that Up Front has not been successfully killed. Kriegspiel. Well, okay. Are we which Kriegspiel are we talking about here, Brant? Are we talking about the old old school Kriegspiel, or are we talking about Avalon Hill's Kriegspiel designed by Tom Shaw? Because I would say it has been around a few years and is in no danger of being reprinted. But the original Kriegspiel will continue to attract attention as a really interesting experience for people who are otherwise interested in war games, who maybe would be enriched by that experience, which I think is almost everybody. Neil Badkey, thanks for stopping by. I mean, I can't argue. Okay, let's reposition without using the damaged arm. So I could have to agree, flat, and of course we're screwing up the focus. I can't help but agree that flat top certainly has issues, and certainly I would love to see somebody, and I hope that this is what Bill Cooper's doing, redesign flat top with an eye toward modernizing the mechanics without losing anything from the experience. So that's my hope for Torpedo Junction, for the record. Well, there are different approaches to putting it all back in the box. There's sorting everything out neatly, which I always do with other people's games. But my games is a sweep into the box type of things, at least some of the time, and I'll reorganize it later. And I do eventually get to that. I don't just like, it's time to play Congress of Vienna again. Fuck. That doesn't happen. It is now it took, most of a year, but it's now reorganized. About 6 months, I'd say. SPQR, yeah, and I would extend this to the, the entire Very Much Alive series of Great Battles of History too, right? So the first game in the series is actually Great Battles of Alexander, and the original edition of which differs noticeably from the current edition. And one of these days, the reason I still have the old one is I'd like to do a compare and contrast between the two at some point. So it's another thing on the list of videos that haven't gotten done yet. All right. And Chris Yap points out many old SPI and or S&T games are being redone by Decision. And I, applaud Decision for doing this. There's good reasons why a lot of those games still retain the fan base that they do. And if Decision or anybody can make that can leverage that inside a business model that works for that, then I'm all for it. I think it's a great idea. So and I will also point out that I also think that Decision is doing a lot of good stuff in terms of presentation now. Their presentation is far better than it used to be in terms of rules organization, rules layout, also the counter quality, the map quality. It's all way higher than it often was back in the golden age. All right, we are officially 10 minutes behind on the chat. Victory in the Pacific and War at Sea, those are great games too. There's 5 Game Master. So you had Axis and Allies, Shogun, Conquest of the Empire. Yeah, there are 5. Conquest of the Empire, Fortress America, and Broadsides and Boarding Parties, which is the only one that I have never owned. But ironically, my brother did, and he's not a gamer at all. He likes football. So Slagonix played Conquest of the Empire the most of the Game Master games. I definitely played Shogun, but I did play Conquest of the Empire a fair amount as well. I liked the Japanese theme. I was more into that. I kind of evolved away from that, but which is lame of me, but that's Titan. There you go. Old copies were hoarded forever, technically reprinted. So I have never actually seen in person I think it's Valley Games that redid Titan. It was Valley Games or Phalanx or somebody like that. I have the old one, and the old one has the Dave Trampier art, and that's why I still have the old one, and I have never even tried to find a new one. Although I'm sure it's nice, but it doesn't have Dave Trampier's art in it. So, which if you look at there's 20 trolls in the game, right? Every troll is different. None of them are just like the same troll one like you would see nowadays. They were all drawn individually by Dave Trampier, who's an artist I have a great fondness for. Thank you, Dave, from Wisconsin. Well, Bill has his release plan, and if that's working for Bill, I'm not sure how it's working, but if that's working for Bill and Bill says it is, then I will defer to Bill on that. That said, sooner is better, but I got plenty of stuff to do in the meantime. Is this thing available on Steam? is what I would like to know. I have almost drunk this entire thing, actually. All right. So Jeff Beeler mentions Britannia, which recently came back from its original publisher, actually, but I think it qualifies despite that. So Stacking Louis points out, please do hit the thumbs up button. 156 people watching right now, which is very good. This is the 50th anniversary of Titan. Oh, so that was an Avalon Hill acquisition as well. They picked it up. Oh, I don't remember the name of the original publisher, but it was in what sure looked like a pizza box, or at least a pizza box type of box. And I have actually seen that in person. I have not manhandled it, but Simon Weinberger, Freedom of the Galaxy. Yeah, this is a nostalgic favorite of mine as well. I doubt anyone will redo this game, but from what everybody says, the redone version is basically Star Wars Rebellion. So check that out if you desire. Slagonic says Chaosium seems to be thriving these days. It looks like it, yeah, and I hope I'm right, right? Because I would just as soon see Chaosium never go away. I would love Chaosium to be around basically forever. So, and that's because I like their games. I would say the same thing about MMP, right? So, all right, as Meandering Mike points out, there's been 4 different publishers for Britannia: Gibson Games, Avalon Hill, Flatlined, and Pacific Gold Soldier Games. And Lou has a YouTube channel, actually, which has some pretty good content on it, I think. War and Peace, well, so I can't argue with War and Peace. However, the fact that it's currently in its 7th edition is kind of an artifact of the way Kickstarter does things. So I don't know that there have been particularly many changes in like editions 4 through 7, for example. I don't even know which one I have. I think I have the second one that they did, I think. And that's from One Small Step. And it's very nice. It's very nice. And it is a real solid game too. At least, again, ignore the pretend the campaign game's not in there, but otherwise it's a very solid game. Marty clarifies Angola. Now he plays on a fancy enlarged version, which is always good. All right. I am trying to get caught up. I guess where I was going with that, Brent, is I'm not 100% sure how closely Battle Droids was related to Battletech. It could be more closely than I'm presuming. Because like I said, I played Battletech back in the day. I never did play Battle Droids, or really, I'm not sure I've ever seen a copy either. D&D is the ultimate gaming lich. I think so. I mean, it's unkillable. It's even if its publisher decided tomorrow that that this isn't making enough money, we're gonna sell it or bury it or whatever and reinvest those funds into Magic the Gathering, which is something that could happen, at least in theory, depending on how what the status is. I don't foresee that happening like in the immediate future because D&D's booming right now. Even they couldn't kill it if they decided to just stop publishing it today. Who would, people would just go on and play out of their existing books. This is the beauty of the role-playing game, is that fundamentally all of these supplements and the adventures and the worlds and the settings and all of that is all extra. It's nice to have, and certainly I can't say I don't buy that stuff. So, but ultimately you should be able to play forever out of the core book or core books or whatever the core book arrangement is. And D&D, you could totally do this. You could totally say, I've got, well, okay, so I personally, you can't see this, but I can. I personally have about 4, 5, maybe 5 feet of shelf space. That's D&D stuff at, currently. That said, I have also owned a lot over the years, and, that stuff kind of fell away. The physical products fell away because I needed, mostly because I needed money, sometimes because I needed money, and sometimes because I wanted another game product more, right? And sometimes that was the D&D product. All right. So Pretty Albert says the Battle Droids came out around the time when Harmony Gold marketed the Robotech Animal. I think anime is what's headed there. I'm assuming that's auto-correct at fault. The threatened major lawsuits with some of the Mech IP forcing Fawcett to rename the game. You know what? I have not researched this at all. I will tell you that I did recognize a decent number of the illustrations in the original BattleTech from Robotech. So there's that. So, well, I mean, I think if you read their press, there's been a bunch of video on this. If you read their press release, they say what is obviously the case. This is what everyone is calling it already. So they might as well, right? Yeah, I'm reluctant to read that much into the just mere fact that they're going to start calling it 5.5e. So chess 1470. Oh, I think chess predates 1475. There might be like our modern version of chess, but chess goes back to well before the time of Christ. Yeah, you know, I'd say you're right. This is clearly a missed marketing. I mean, it's not like they didn't do anything for the 50th anniversary, but this is what, well, I will say that I think the Monster Manual came out in early 2025, so that might have screwed with that. But this is a great marketing idea that they should have picked up on. This is not complicated. History of the World. History of the World has been republished. I'm not sure if it's available now, but I like Civ a lot better, and I will readily acknowledge that I like Civ despite some issues that it has. I think it's Watch It Played. No, it's not Watch It Played. It's Shut Up and Sit Down did a very good analysis of classic Civilization in one of its versions. And that's another one, right? That's, that basically has never really gone away. And there's reasons, that's because it's a really good game. It's got some issues, but it's a really good game. That's why it's still around. History of the World, I don't know. I just didn't like it as much as Civilization personally. I would say Napoleon's last battles has definitely spawned a large number of additional games in the form of the Library of Napoleonic Battles, which is built on that foundation. So I've never played any of the Napoleon at War stuff. I'd kind of like to. That's the quad that goes a little more in the direction of Napoleon at Waterloo. But I've never played any of that. I have played Napoleon's Last Battle, though. And I haven't played the campaign, but I've played the 4 battles. All right. How far behind are we now? 12 minutes behind. All right. Perfidious Albion says that the Soviets in the late 30s had a design to mount the KV-2 turret on a walking mount, but it never left the drawing board. That would have been a hell of a surprise to spring on the Germans in June of 1941. They probably should have thought about that a little more. All right. Avalon Hill Napoleon. Yes. And not only does it stand the test of time, it's been, it was originally released by Gamma 2. Then it got picked up by Avalon Hill, who put it through a couple different editions, or at least printings. And now it's in its 4th or 5th printing back from Columbia Games, which used to be Gamma 2. So it has kind of come full circle, and it's on my list of must-play games. I haven't played it. It's not something you can solitaire. So I've got Eastwind Rain. Frank, thanks for stopping by. I got to get back to you on your latest email, by the way. I think War and Peace is a terrific game. I think there are reasons why it has stood up as well as it has. I think the reason why Mr. Lincoln's War has not stood up as well as War and Peace, for example, is that, first of all, it was published by 3W, a much smaller company with a much smaller presence in the market. And therefore much smaller general availability. So fewer people, relatively speaking, played it back in the day. And the other thing I will blame this on is the atrocious production quality of those particular 3W games. I have any number of 3W games here that are, I have no, I mean, they're like produced in the late 80s and 90s. So you take that into account for when you're evaluating their production quality. But, you know, I have no particular issue with any of the other 3W stuff that I've got. So, Timon, thanks for stopping by. P51 says, if they remake Starship Troopers again, which is supposed to happen, the Avalon Hill could come back again. And I think that was a solid game too, actually. Neil Badke has all of the Game Master series except Broadsides and Boarding Parties, which had I played it, and no, my brother had it, and he had no interest in it. So I assume it was a mislabeled Christmas present or some kind. So he never wanted to play it. So I've never played it, but it looked neat. I'd probably like it. Marty says that Valley did redo Titan before they absconded with the upfront. Oh, that was them? I'm not sure I knew that was them or put that together in my head, that it was the same group of people. I understand some of the Valley game stuff has issues with warping. I know they redid Republic of Rome as well, and I have no need for that because I have the original. And I think the original is so close to perfection that I see no pressing need for a modern redo. So, all right. I'm not sure I've heard about this, but remember that sometimes movies get announced and never get made, folks. That's what we call development hell in Hollywood. So I'll be curious to see it if it gets remade. Titan was Gorgon Star Games. Mike probably has the original, of course. But even the Avalon Hill version was going for I don't know where it's going now. I haven't checked because I don't need to. But at one point, at least, the Avalon Hill version was going for good change. So I'll have to investigate this. Yeah, my wife rushed to assist, by the way. It was very touching. I am emotionally fulfilled now. But my elbow hurts. So I think my ass took most of the fall, to be honest. And I don't know if any of you have noticed this, but I have an extremely muscular ass. So we will pour ourselves another portion. If I have a little more than usual, folks, I fell down the stairs today. So this is intentional, and this will be it. So the water is more to cut down the tannins than anything else. Although I expected it to be completely overpowered and to taste like licking a sawmill, and it actually does not. So I am pleased. So if Star Wars Rebellion, says Brant, is the spiritual successor to Freedom of the Galaxy, does that make it the only game out there to have the serial number put back on it? I mean, although you could probably get a good joke out of this, this isn't it. But I mean, in some sense, this is true. But I don't have any kind of sense that Star Wars Rebellion, which I have not played, bears any mechanical similarity whatsoever to Star Wars Rebellion. And I wouldn't expect it to. That's a game that came out in the last decade or two anyway. And Freedom of the Galaxy came out in like 1979 or 80 or something like that. Maybe 81. Could have been 81. Frank says the Columbia Block games decided by the Wiley guys. I think he means Worthington Publishing at that point. We'll be here long after maybe all of us are gone. Let's hope so. So Red Jack and Adam Starlight. Yeah, these were the characters with the serial numbers filed off, folks. It's a really neat game. And actually it has a bit of its own vibe too, which is clearly not quite adjacent to Star Wars, as in like slightly out of phase with Star Wars, right? All right, so Brent says Battle Droids is BattleTech. Say name changes with railing. All right, well then it's the first version of BattleTech, and I'm thinking of a different product entirely. But see, this was my recollection too, or at least lead miniatures, which back in the day was how we did it, right? Avalon Hill Gangsters. I never played Avalon Hill's Gangsters. I would be a little surprised if it wasn't fun. I did, however, play the Mayfair. What was this called? I've mentioned this before, and somebody had to bail me out in the chat. The Mayfair Gangster card game, which was a hoot. I have also great fondness for TSR's Gangbusters, actually, thinking about it. Traveler, well, Traveler is another one of these games. And Danny, I'm shocked that it has taken me this long to mention it, because I don't think I have mentioned it up until now in this show. But it has been through more publishers than any RPG I can think of. Or any tabletop game. Well, if we count international editions, then it gets more complicated. But domestically, let's say, it's been through more publishers than any tabletop game I can think of any kind, actually. GDW went to Imperium Games, has also been done by the publisher of the D20 Traveler. I forget who that actually was. Avenger Enterprises is what's in my head. They're related. It's the Grip people. There's of course Mongoose, who's done 2 editions. There's Steve Jackson Games did a version of Traveler which doesn't use the system, so maybe you count it and maybe you don't. There's a huge number of third-party publishers that have published material for Traveler and who continue to do so. Well, none of the old ones are around anymore, unfortunately. Although there's, Imperial Lines, which has recently been resurrected by Robert Eaglestone. There is a clone of this available. I forget what it's called. There is a clone of this available on Drive-Thru RPG. This is indeed a terrific system. There's some the chase rules possibly have not yet been surpassed. Actually, White Box. So I started. Well, we'll talk about this. Actually, I tell you what, Timon, we're going to hold you off while I attempt to catch up on the chat while we hear from our official sponsors, our good friends at Noble Knight Games. So take it away, Noble Knight.
Here at Noble Knight Games, we've been carefully growing the world's largest selection of board games, role-playing games and dice, war games, miniatures and paints, card games, and more, going on 25 years now. Our rustic castle contains more game and hobby goodness than you can shake a stick at, complete with careful packaging and the finest customer service the land can provide. You can buy, sell, trade from anywhere in the world, just like nature intended. Noble Knight Games.
Folks, remember, that's a 30-second spot. I can only catch up so much in 30 seconds. So I am currently 6 minutes behind on the chat. So I'm flagging the stuff that I probably scared the cats away, Michael Pratt. Thanks for stopping by. Compass, Charles Sator says that Compass is redoing White Death. Neil Badke has a question that I need to address. I'm going through the chat and picking questions I want to address. So, all right, Perigi, of course, is quite right on this. All right, we're caught up. All right, so here I'm going to tackle these in reverse order, I think. There are sort of 2 editions of GURPS Traveler. There is the GURPS Traveler 3rd edition stuff, which is a huge pile of books, deck plans. They did a whole bunch of stuff. And then they did and that's all for GURPS 3rd edition. And then they did a single volume for GURPS 4th edition, which is GURPS Interstellar Wars. So this is kind of true. There are 2 printings of the GURPS well, there's more than that, actually, because they were available. The GURPS Traveler main book was available in both hardcover and softcover, and at least the second printing was done in both formats. So, or at least the first printing was done in both formats. So there are different editions, but I mean, meaningfully, it doesn't really matter which one you get. Jonathan Dyer says that Tunnels and Trolls is getting a facelift. I'd be curious to see this, actually. I've never played Tunnels and Trolls, and I have never owned it. But it actually is a pretty interesting design, especially when you consider how old it is, 1975. And Perigi says that the campaign for North Africa is going to be legendary, because it is. I mean, it is, but it's not legendary in the sense we can't stop talking about how much fun we're playing it. It's legendary in the sense of let's all get our jollies by making fun of it. So Neil Badke asks about how I feel about the new Traveler Kickstarter that is coming. This is coming from, I think it's launching toward the end of the month, I think. I will surely acquire it for not just for the collection. I should probably do a video on this. Not just for the collection, but because I'm curious to see how they handle a very different style of play using the 5th edition D&D rules as that's foundation. Unlike I think probably a lot of Traveler people, there are Traveler fans who will feel like the D20 mechanics are simply incompatible with the style of play that Traveler materializes. But I'm not convinced that that's correct. I will say that whether it can be done or not, Traveler D20 didn't do it. Traveler D20 is interesting, however. And I don't mean that as backhanded. I think it's a legitimately, because they really did try to bring Traveler's playstyle and Traveler's core assumptions to that system. And to some extent, I do think they succeeded, but perhaps at the price of making the book actually playable. And that is problematic. So I will make a couple observations on this, namely that the product is licensed from Mongoose Publishing, this Traveler 5e thing. They immediately had a branding problem when they decided they were going to call it 5e, and without considering that there is a 5th edition Traveler floating around. And is in fact also still available and in print, and which I think there's a lot of legitimately good things in at this point. I should have a Travel T5 10 years in video too. So I don't have a problem with them doing it in any sense. I am not convinced that it will be good. I am pretty sure it's not going to be something I will decide to switch to. But at the same time, I don't, I'm curious to see it. I'm curious to see how they try. Now, if they just it's D&D, but instead of, fighters, rangers, and wizards, you have army, navy, and merchants. If it's that kind of thing, then yeah, that's not going to be a good adaptation in any sense, but I'm not convinced that's what they're going to do. So I would imagine that the people responsible for this, and is it Tim Brown, I think, is in the loop from the original GDW group, not the original GDW group, but from GDW. So that gives me some reason to be confident as well. All right. All right, so Jeff Beeler says that Brittany at Compass Games is trying to get Bill to publish Imperium and Dark Nebula. Bill is afraid to go near the Traveler IP. Imperium already has Conflict, GW, and Avalanche versions. Yes, but nobody likes the Avalanche versions. And the Conflict Games version is a collectible artifact. It is not a meaningful edition of Imperium in any sense. Next time I talk to Bill, here's what I'm going to tell him. I'm going to say, talk to Mark. I mean, I know Mark's not the IP owner anymore, but I'm just saying, and Mark might just say, you got to talk to Mongoose now, and maybe Bill didn't want to deal with that, and okay, but I don't think, I would think the golden opportunity of Traveler branded board games from GDW that could make an appearance today with minimal changes and be really successful is Imperium. So Dark Nebula less so, I think. But frankly, you could kind of put both things in the same box because it's the same game, except Dark Nebula has the geomorphic boards instead of just here's the board. So I understand why Bill would be hesitant to try and step on an IP landmine, but I also kind of feel like Mongoose is, as Mark always was, pretty easy to deal with. So, and I will observe that Bill may have missed his window on this, right? So I'd love to see a new version of Imperium, though. I did, of course, buy, I didn't own any flats until the 90s. I mean, I had some magazine games, but I didn't have any flats until the 90s, because the original flats that I got with when I was a kid with Paratroop, who knows what happened to those. I think those were amazing trays, by the way, at the time. I had no idea what I was talking about. This stuff is worth huge change now, if you are inclined to part with it. That is not a tacit offer to acquire it. I have no interest in that. It is way too much of a curiosity for me. Craig Alexander says T5 is a great reference document, but not an ideal of Traveler in his opinion, and it is also my opinion. I think it does have a lot of value as a kind of a toolkit that you dip into when you need to do certain things and you feel like you need a mechanical foundation for them, while running Traveler using whatever other version of Traveler you prefer, whether that's classic. I am not really aware of anybody running Mega Traveler or Traveler New Era nowadays. Or T4, which is fundamentally not that bad if you just look at the core book. It's the errata that is largely the problem. So, and yes, this will confuse people. I'm already behind again. Fifth printing white box is still pretty rare, as I recall. No. I would say, I mean, so fundamentally, Mongoose Traveler was kind of built to be in line with Classic Traveler. That's not to say that you can use Classic Traveler stuff with it automatically. You do, I mean, for example, character creation is a lot more detailed in Mongoose Traveler, because I think that's what people expect nowadays. You end up with more skills because of that, and you kind of have to figure that out if you're trying to like import a Classic Traveler NPC into your Mongoose Traveler game. But it is something that I am fairly comfortable doing by eyeball on the spot, so I don't think it's much of a big deal. And the combat series doesn't work the same, but the hit points do, and that's the important part. If the damage works the same, then pretty much everything else is going to go in. I mean, you use if you're playing the Mongoose version, you use the Mongoose weapon stats, right? So that's it. I've got 2-3 copies of Imperium, so I'm in good shape, and I haven't played it in a long time, unfortunately. D&D second printing? What are we talking about second printing? Are we talking about white box? Brown box would have been the OD&D second printing. I think that was still in the brown box for the first 3, I think. But if you have like a Holmes second printing, that might be worth good change too, actually. And even the AD&D books in the very early printings. This is true too. GOT is 100% on. If we're going to try this, then I would probably recommend having it, because it gives you mechanical foundation. Hey, you encounter a new alien race. Well, T5's got rules for figuring that out. So. Jeff Beeler, has an original Imperium in the Conflict Games version. So Conflict Games was John Hill's company, which eventually got sold to or absorbed, but however that worked. I'm not sure what the legal language is for this situation. And I'm not sure what the situation is, or otherwise I might. But they got absorbed by Game Designers Workshop. I don't have the Conflict Games version. I have the flat box GDW version, and it's still pretty minimally Traveler-esque. I mean, if you're familiar with Traveler, you're going to recognize some stuff in it, right? But it wasn't until the later version of Imperium, which is this one, that it would like put History of the Imperium in the box. All right. Mongo's second edition. No, they're not interchangeable, but to some extent, I think a lot of the subsystems in T5 can sit on top of Mongoose Traveler very comfortably. And I'm predominantly talking about the stuff in the third book, Worlds and Adventures. Or at least, I mean, it was originally published in one book, but the world stuff, the alien species creation stuff, that stuff could comfortably sit right on top. Like the characters are not going to look the same because it's a character creation system that is actually very straightforward, rather surprisingly, if you're familiar with these books. Character creation system, it's very similar to T4, which there was really no issue with the character creations. I don't want to say no issue. There was errata, but structurally, the character creation in T4 was totally fine. There you go. That's worth big change. Big change. And I don't need to tell you who to go talk to. So, this is true. I am now older than some of my Traveler characters. How depressing. Thank you, Dan, for mentioning this. Yeah, so there's okay, so on this, you can find the details of this at the Achaeum, which is a like D&D history of old editions type of website. The first three printings of Deities and Demigods is a book of pantheons of mythology. Okay, mythological pantheons, so the Greeks, the Romans, all this other stuff. The Egyptians, the Sumerians. There's some good ones in there. There's the Mesoamerican pantheon is in there. There's no Slavic pantheon and no Anglo-Saxon pantheon, unfortunately. But you could just kind of make that work with the Norse pantheon. So they included in the first three printings of Deities and Demigods, they included three pantheons from fiction. The Fritz Lieber Lankmar series pantheon, a pantheon of Nehwan, the Melnivenaean pantheon from Michael Moorcock's Elric stuff, and the Cthulhu mythos from H.P. Lovecraft. At the time, however, there was already an agreement between the IP holders and Chaosium to do a Call of Cthulhu game, so there was some friction over it. But I think the term copyright violations might not be an accurate one, because what ended up happening was Chaosium gave TSR permission to do that, and in return, Chaosium got some kind of compensation. I don't recall what that was, but it's maybe in Designers and Dragons. That factoid may be in Designers and Dragons. Or it may be in the Gloranthan, what's that thing called? The Mainz Index to Glorantha, which is a thing that Chaosium has actually printed, or at least printed on demand. You can buy it from them, and it's got a whole bunch of background on early Chaosium stuff. So we did get the time change. So, John, it's not your fault. We decided every different country has to do the friggin' change at the same time. It is a recipe for inefficiency. Stratomatic baseball. Yeah, no kidding. This is totally unkillable. Are people still? I mean, I think probably people are still playing Status Pro. I played Status Pro back in the day. I've never played Stratomatic. Danny Secretary just picked up the new 2025 season of Stratomatic. I know that's alive and kicking. Well, they got stuck in a number of interesting positions. So let me finish this story. So the first two printings, am I getting this right? The first three printings of Deities and Demigods had all three of those fictional pantheons in them with slightly different text in the header block. And after that, they took it out. These books are not as the books, as we call it, with squids, are not that rare. There's probably something like 50,000 copies of it that they made. If you compare this to like the real rarities from TSR, like Up the Garden Path or the original Palace of the Silver Princess, or that got pulped, or any number of other things. That wasn't the only thing TSR ever pulped. If you find yourself, I leave it as an exercise for the viewer to find a image online of the original printing of the Outer Planes Appendix, the first one. Remember back in the day when TSR was doing the loosely format for the monsters, the Outer Planes Appendix. Take a look at the original printing of the cover, and you will see why it was recalled. It was recalled. So, so there's that. This sounds like it could be actually a lot of fun, to be completely honest. Mo from Mo's Game Table is here. Mo, thanks for stopping by. They got free ads in Dragon. I'm not sure they did, actually, but I think they did get a credit in later versions of Deities and Demigods, which hung around even after they took those two pantheons, the Cthulhu and the Melibnean mythos, out. The Nehuan mythos stayed in all future printings of Deities and Demigods. I had the one with squids, and I lent it to somebody when I was a kid, and never got it back. And I would love a copy with squids. Currently, I have a copy with no squids, which is unfortunate. I do think there has been some garbling of this. This is the same situation that so a very similar situation happened with Fritz Lieber's people. So I think Chaosium had gone through Fritz's agent, and Gary kind of knew Fritz, so he reached out directly to Fritz, and they both got the rights to the Fafford and the Grey Mouser stuff. And then TSR started making noise about it, and Chaosium kind of said, you know, I think it's fine. We're just not going to do that thing. So and this is discussed in also possibly in the Mind's Index to Glorantha, actually. Starfire, yeah. I don't seem to hear a lot of people talking about it outside this stream. Who did? Well, if you're gonna ask, I mean, it's not like I don't have it. All right, so Martin Doherty and Hunter Gordon, the late Hunter Gordon. Thankfully, Marty's still with us. QuickLink Interactive. That's who did this. There was a bunch of there was some additional stuff published by them, but there was a lot of material published by Avenger Enterprises, and some of that material is pretty cool, actually. So I have recently given that shelf a little bit of breathing room. So that's true. I have one of the campaign books I might even have two of the campaign books for Starfire back when it was Task Force Games that were written by David Weber. So, and that was another one of those things like the old Battletech, like Clan. I don't know about the Clan books, but like the original like campaign books for Battletech that had like these pretty detailed military histories in them. I ate that stuff up as a kid. Holy cow. All right. Wolf Dog remembers some controversy with Deities and Demigods using cultural religious figures. I do. I don't recall that, and this is not data. This is my anecdote. I don't recall those kind of issues coming up at the time. However, it has since been pointed out that some of the content of the Deities and Demigods book is perhaps, as we say, culturally insensitive, which is true, right? But let's not make a mountain out of this either, right? I mean, I don't know that there's that much noise being made about this. Yeah, he wrote a couple pieces for Dragon, as I recall. And TSR did do Lankmar stuff, and actually, their original Lankmar book was really good, actually. Retro Sports Network is the fellow playing Stratomatic to the soundtrack. That's actually pretty cool. I never in my life have I purchased an issue of Nexus magazine. I do remember it, and I remember leafing through it, and it was kind of Task Force Games' house magazine, and it was but at the time I was not into any of their games, so it was not useful to me. And I've seen copies since, of course, but I've never felt obliged to acquire them. I do have space considerations around here, folks. So Daddy Rolled a One had a YouTube channel covering the history of early RPGs, including D&D, OD&D, and AD&D. I have seen this channel, and I may be subscribed to this channel, in fact. Yeah, Fox's Teeth, Black Widows. Black Widows, I remember. Grey Death Legion, I'm not sure I had. So, and as Danny reminds us, smash that like button, folks. Striker's actually a pretty cool game. Miniatures game set, let's say Traveler compatible miniatures combat with 15mm miniatures was the intention, but you could scale it up if you wanted to. Ooh, Timon says that Steve White, the co-author of the Starfire books, has passed last year. That's unfortunate news. Do I have my original Starfire? This is one of those things where for a while I was throwing boxes away where I could consolidate things. And in some cases, what ended up happening was I ended up wanting to sell the game, but kept some of the contents that didn't originally come in the game. And I think Starfire might be one of those. What really interested me at the time was the Imperial Starfire rules, the campaign rules, which remain incredibly elaborate to this day. And if you were inclined, you could probably code that and make it into a playable experience. I think it would be an absolutely hellish experience to run it by hand. Yeah, I would. I mean, I can't argue with this. The terms of their license permit it to basically go on indefinitely as long as somebody is interested in publishing it. So the kind of license that nobody gets out, nobody gets anymore. I can agree with this statement. Well, I can agree with the idea that this was a bad idea. Let me put it that way. The best, do I have it? I don't. My personal favorite D&D Gods book is Fates and Avatars for AD&D 2nd edition. It was redone for 3rd edition as Fates and Avatars, Fates and Pantheons. That I have. It's a Forgotten Realm specific book. There was a companion, I believe, as well, which I didn't like as much because it's like, you know, a bunch of demi-human deities and stuff like that. But it was less like obviously useful. But it really did give a pretty cohesive picture of that pantheon, given the fact that it's a pantheon with a bazillion deities. So. Well, it is kind of, I guess, but that's just kind of where the conversation went, as always occurs here, folks. So, yeah, folks, if you don't listen to the Armchair Dragoons podcast, you ought to. Let me just say that. Maybe I've never said it quite that way before, but I was on a couple of weeks ago and we talked about the intersection between war games and RPGs. Now, of course, I'm not going to rehash the podcast. Go listen to the podcast. We talked about this for like an hour and 20 minutes, so... I remember the Commander's Edition, but it was not until the Captain's Edition that I first bought and played Starfleet Battles. Yes, I would agree with this as well, and I think it's a testament to the strength of that game system that it has been resurrected as well. So, excellent. Very good. See, we got people listening, Brant. That's what you wanted. Did I get to all of the? No, I didn't. So there are let me finish up with the Traveler 5e thing. The only product I have looked at from that publisher is the World's Largest Dungeon itself, in its original 3rd edition or 3.5 version. And while it's it's kind of a concept piece, and I don't think it's incredibly leverageable for use in an actual campaign. So that may or may not, that was ages ago, and that may or may not have any relation to what they're working on now, which I have seen none of. So, and MBT, that's true, and IDF as well soon. So, well, I did my duty as a crotchety old wargamer today and fell down the stairs. So how about that? My wargaming credentials have been reaffirmed. So, well, I think we all know who he's calling crotchety here. It could be me, but it's probably somebody else. By the way, we have a name around here for people who don't clip their play with the unclipped counters, and that name is Square. So anyway, Chuck Turner, Chuck, thanks for stopping by. It's been a while since I've actually run into you in person. Where's my water? So Jeff Beeler says that the World War Game Championships keeps a lot of classic, aka older war games going. This is true, but WBC would be unable to do that were it not for the games themselves, right? I mean, there's still a few really old games, war games that get played like in the whatever the top tier of the tournament is at WBC, but I think it's the games that have allowed that, and not really the WBC happens to be working them into its program. I will, however, also observe that there is a certain personality of tabletop gamer, who likes competitive play, and because WBC's event is basically a big tournament, that appeals to them, right? John Hill's tank. Yeah, I'm not sure where this is at the moment. Well, I mean, Compass is supposed to redo this, but I'm not sure where that project is at this point. You know, there's a really interesting way. Dan Webb mentions Tactics 2, of course, which is a re-implementation of the original Tactics, the game that launched Avalon Hill. There is a sense in which it is really interesting to examine Tactics or Tactics 2, because it gives you an ability that you won't get with like 3 days of Gettysburg, right? In that you can examine the mechanics divorced from any historical context that had the game been a historical game, it would necessarily have had. So I do think there are a lot of lessons to be learned from Tactics 2 in that sense, because and I'm not 100% sure that we the community have learned all of them. And some of those might be negative lessons as well. If this didn't work, we should not do this again. And I have no specific examples because I have never really looked at Tactics 1 or Tactics 2. But from this standpoint, it becomes an interesting game to look at because, okay, this is an exercise in pure wargame mechanics from 1954 or whatever it was. So I hope so. I endeavor to maintain a positive attitude, even when I have proven myself to be an oaf that mere minutes ago. So I would be interested in seeing this. And I think one can also have an interesting analysis of something like Stalingrad or Midway, whatever older Avalon Hill game you want to choose, even though it has historical context, but it will enable different lessons than Tactics would with its completely made up situation. So, I mean, if you want to play like a square, I mean, it's your game. You do what you want with it. I elect to round my corners. Possibly not a huge number of corners have been rounded this evening, however. Oh, the great Koufax Desert got traded to Detroit. Yeah, there's a bunch of in-jokes on the Tactics or Tactics 2 maps. Do they have the same map? I don't even know. Well, in Rusty Staples, thanks for stopping by. In fairness, this is where things are going, right? Pre-rounded corners are where things are going. There are some types of war games that will not lend themselves to pre-rounded corners because there'll be too many counter sheets. But maybe not. I mean, there's the Chinese edition of Third Winter that's got all pre-rounded counters and mounted boards, and I think that's absolutely nutty. But I mean, they did it, so I don't have access to their metrics. I don't know that they're wrong, so I hope it worked out for them, and we continue to see that. I mean, I also okay, yeah, Avalon Hill Blitzkrieg. I have Avalon Hill Stalingrad. Or is it Blitzkrieg? Shit, I don't even know. Damn it. I've got too many games, folks. Bulge 65, I think, is of the games from the 60s. It's one of the Avalon Hill games that I think holds up really, really well. Maybe best. You also have in the 60s Africa Corps and Bismarck, and I want to say Submarine, but that's one of the real early ones. A number of other examples. I think Bulge 65 probably holds up better than a lot of those games. Let me put it that way. I don't think Africa Corps holds up that well, but in part that is because of the choice of scale for the game and the nature of what happened in that campaign. So, well, Brant, I didn't say I was going to stop acquiring games. I never said that. This is true. The Mr. President, my Mr. President pre-rounded counters, dog ears anyway. That was annoying. I can agree. Mike has too many games. So, Mike, I'll send you my wish list. I'm just kidding. I'm not actually doing that. Cardboard Commander also mentions wooden ships and Iron Men, which was brought up right at the beginning of the show. I've got Gettysburg 82, whatever it was, whenever the Gettysburg was out in the 80s, because they redid a lot of these games. The later versions of Bulge are not really the same game, and every version of Gettysburg is basically different. What about, oh, here's a great question from John C. What about war games today that will not die? I do think that one of the things that we're just going to have to learn to accept, and we're not there yet, and you know, that's okay. We have an established community. We're going to have to start becoming okay with the broader definition of wargaming that somebody from the DoD might use, right? Where there is a conflict. It is not necessarily a kinetic conflict, but it involves governments and armies and stuff like that, and and military assets. We're going to need to reconcile that, because that's not going. Those games are not going away. Those are possibly the more popular side of the hobby right now. I'm not sure that's the case. I have no metrics to demonstrate that that's the case. It's one of those things that we're just going to have to get used to. So, and we haven't yet. That's actually a good point. Vince Reed mentions GBACW. So let's recall that the series originated in the days of SPI with games like Terrible Swift Sword and Stonewall, and the other ones that were branded as Great Battles of the American Civil War, Pea Ridge, Wilson's Creek, Drive on Washington, Stone Jackson and Corinth, and that may have been all that SPI did. But TSR did a couple. TSR and or 3W did a couple in the magazine, and then of course the series is now resurrected in substantially revised form with GMT, and really seems to be thriving under the current leadership of Dick Whitaker and Dick's team, and Stigler is one of those people. So we have to give credit, square or not, to Stigler for being part of the GBACW renaissance that I think we are in fact experiencing right now. Oh, I mean, yes, I would say so. I would would not be the one that I would jump to. I would jump to For the People, which retained its name through GMT. John Company is a game that I would very much like to play. I have not done so. Empires and Arms. No, it's still kicking, out of print or not, and that's the real test, right? Is if it's been out of print, especially for a long time, are people still playing this? And a lot of the games that have been mentioned tonight, maybe all of them, people are still playing. People are still playing Russian Campaign. People are still playing Flat Top, Wood Ships, and Iron Men, and Empires in Arms. And some of these publishers have, or some of these games have rotated through a bunch of different publishers. Some of them haven't. In at least some cases, that's easy to see why, because it's basically, there's a particular individual in charge. In like World and Flames case, for example, that's Harry. Harry's ADG pretty much. I know he's got other people helping, but I mean, as long as Harry wants to keep doing it, we're going to keep seeing World and Flames, which is good by me. And I think that if ADG were to go away, I think World and Flames would live on as a legendary strategic level World War II game. So I'd say no, but I also might have to think about this a little harder. Yes, this is true. Jeff Beeler says Wooden Ships and Iron Man is more fun with miniatures, but you don't have to change anything. You just take the counter off and put the miniature on the board, and you're done, right? So yes, this is totally true. And I think there's a pretty happy Labatai community out there too, who are pretty happy with Labatai. I mean, it's like they can choose whatever rule set they prefer out of a choice of several, and it doesn't really matter who the publisher is. And there's two living publishers, Marshall Enterprises and Clash of Arms. And Clash of Arms is continuing to do stuff. They released ILAO not that long ago, mid to late 2025, something like that. I just got it not that long ago. Thank you, those of you who have used the Noble Knight affiliate link, because that's how I got that. So, and I'm curious to see what Stigler has. I mean, come on. I mean, okay. So, Mark, you're pushing Stigler's buttons here because he's been on record. I say if you already have GCA, or if you're already a GBACW player, you should give it a look, but I would not expect it to change your mind about which version of the game system you prefer. What I think it does have a chance to do is bring some people into GBACW who might look at something like Into the Woods and say, "Oh, wow, this looks complicated." So I also have faith in Dick and his team. So I think that it will be popular. I think some people will elect to play with it, and people will loudly proclaim, including myself, their willingness to be perfectly happy with the big system, right? So I do think we might be doing simple GBACW a disservice by comparing it sight unseen to simple GBOH, which I don't think is a good distillation of great battles of history. I think it's just as complicated. Some people say it plays faster, other people say it doesn't. I think it's just as complicated and loses the doctrinal interactions that make GBOH fascinating in the first place. So there are reasons to prefer it. I just don't subscribe to those reasons. So yes, this was Labatai de Calm. That was on Kickstarter or another crowdfunding platform. I got it whenever it was shipped, and I mean, immediately like, wow, I didn't realize I was getting quite this much stuff, and I haven't really had the time to go through it. So Squad Leader will live forever. I've recently reacquired a copy of the original Squad Leader, unpunched, and not, I'd say it's in VG shape or something like that, but none of the corners are blown. One of the corners, at least one of the corners, is repaired with clear packing tape. So it's not a collector's piece, but I don't care. I wanted an original Squad Leader. I wanted to make sure I had all the pieces, and I probably will never play it, but I will very much be happy to read those rules again, right? All right, so Stigler does say, Nathan Mueller, the designer of Simple GBACW, is a smart cookie. He's sure he's done a great job. He just doesn't believe in multiple rule systems for a given series. So bear in mind that every series that's been around for a long time has multiple versions of the rules, right? There's BCS is in its 2.0, for example, or 2.1, something like that, and I'm not sure it's going to advance much further than that. OCS is in like 4.3, I think, right now. And I mean, if you look between OCS 4. Whatever and OCS 1.0, it's pretty different. So this is always true, right? So it doesn't particularly bother me, nor would it particularly bother me if I was going to say, if I was talking to somebody I was going to meet at a convention to play OCS, and they say, I really would rather play with like the 3 whatever rules. I'd be like, okay, I don't know why, and I would probably engage in a conversation about why, but because I don't know why you would do that. The newer rules are better, but I wouldn't really have like an objection to it simply on the basis of that it's a different rule set than we usually play with, right? And in some cases, I don't have a real choice but to play it. If I want to play Republic of Rome, I'm not going to go download Valley Games' rulebook. I'm going to play it out of the damn copy that I have. So I'm going to use the old one. And I will also stipulate that the various, say, Labatai versions of game systems are not that different. I mean, they're different, but they're all based on the same foundation. All right. I don't know. Well, they've done it. MMP has tried to do it at least twice already, and there's a third project in the works. There was the Panzerblitz Karantan that was in one of the magazines, Operations Magazine, I think. And then they did Panzerblitz Hill of Death, which is, as far as I could tell, not Panzerblitz. And beyond that, there was supposed to be another project that was going to come out. It was going to be Panzerblitz East Front, something like that. And I have heard nothing about that in eons. So I just don't know where that's at. Well, Vince Ree has a point that I've made using slightly different language, which is that all subsequent strategic level World War II games are in some sense answers, direct or indirect, to Third Reich, right? So, I mean, yeah, I'd say Third Reich counts. I mean, it's still alive, right? As a World War from GMT, it's the heart of Third Reich is still in there. I think it's 4 actually. You got the Regs Marie Louise 4th edition, which came in my copy of ILAO, and Premiere. So I think there's at least 4. My advice, if somebody said, hey, I've got a Labatai game, I'd like to know how to get into Labatai, I would tell them, just play with the rule book that you got. I mean, it's going to be fine. To some extent, I think we fuss over, and by we, I mostly mean me, but I think we gamers, too, tend to fuss over details that really aren't that big a deal. So even I would make the statement that this game is not particularly similar to Third Reich, but is an answer to Third Reich. And I think this is true too. Well, John Prados' name was on the box. I'm not sure how closely he was involved. I'm not saying he wasn't. I'm saying I don't have any information based on that. I've never owned this game. To look through to see what the credits say or whatever. And you can't go by BGG for this kind of stuff. All right, folks, it is 9:40 p.m. I think it is time for me to go upstairs and whine to somebody else about how bad my elbow hurts right now. So good discussion. I think we had a good show here tonight. I think I am not I'm feeling okay. That the scotch is, well, this isn't scotch. This is basically homemade bourbon, but I do think that I mean, Labatai is weird in a lot of ways, right? The fact that it has multiple rule systems is like the 3rd or 4th thing on that list. I've already iced the elbow for a good half an hour right before the show. So yeah, I got to watch the friggin' stairs, man. Nope. You're great. And I want to point out that despite the concern that we had last week, and we just want to make sure we're on top of everything, because I didn't catch it. Was something I didn't catch. It wasn't totally over the line or anything super duper egregious, but it's something that I'd like somebody to be monitoring. And it is a testament to the strength of this community, of the people who come up here to watch this show and the chit show and whatever else I managed to do. The character of those people, that we almost never have actual problems. Almost never. So thank you for not being douchebags. All right, folks, we are going to wrap this up at this point. So do I have a video scheduled for later in the week? I might. If I don't, then it's editing time. I got to get stuff edited. So we'll try and get a video out tomorrow and a video out for Thursday, because I have plenty of stuff in the can. And I want to maintain a good operating tempo after really spending the better part of 8 months not. All right, folks, have a great rest of the night. We'll see you all again soon.